Welcome everybody for this evening's class. This is the advanced class of the Self Project, Zoom class number 6. It's called Living with Insight. I just want to make a clarification that the classes are based on input. And there's so many different ways to do this. The classes can be very heavy concepts, and there's so many sources that I have to back up a lot of these different ideas. But I got requests, and this is going by request, people to have a little bit lighter, not that many sources. Additionally, some asked that it be practical, but then that comes at a price of comprehension, because if it's practical, then it's less of the more intellectual, conceptual ideas. But again, feedback is very much appreciated. The Self Project class@gmail.com. Baruch Hashem, we're getting feedback from all over the world. It's greatly appreciated when people give me that feedback. All types. I'm a feedback junkie. Positive, critical, all types. So this is based on an email I received. So I can't do every email, and I'm going to try to get to as many as I can. But this was an email I received this past week from last class. So, actually, I just realized I didn't put on the slide to review, but just, I guess, quick, just to update everyone where we are. This is, like we said, class number 6. So the classes have been, class number 1 was about why we're here. We said we're here because we're becoming the Adam Mashal. The first part of becoming who we are and fulfilling our tafkid and our tachlis in this world is to be ourselves. And we said in class number 2 is the way we do that is by connecting with ourselves, which the primary vehicle for that is Torah, except from first, that's Hara. Class number 3, trying to remember exactly what the classes were. Definitely there was about connecting with ourselves was, I think, class number 4. Our class, and we spoke about Pesach and Shavuos. And class number 5 was addressing a question that came up in the previous class regarding, so how do we actually do that? How come so many people don't know who they are? So we spoke about our fears that stop ourselves from dreaming. And now up to class number 6, which is addressing a question that came up in last class. So the email went like this. Hi, I have a question. Let's say someone has a lot of micro traumas and they keep on happening and they keep internalizing it. How do they stop this cycle? If anyone wasn't here in last class or forgot from last time, we spoke about what stops us from dreaming is because when we go through life, sometimes there could be not capital T traumas, but there could be small T traumas, as they're called, like micro traumas, the small little things. But we get messages from other people and we internalize that and we don't feel like we are going to live our dreams anymore. We give up on our dreams. So this person asked the question, let's say someone has a lot of micro traumas and they keep on happening and they keep internalizing it. How do they stop this cycle? Like when they're acting like their real self, the others say or show that it's not good enough. Then the person either thinks it's the other people's fault or that they themselves are too sensitive and take things too personally. What do you think? Thank you for taking the time to answer. So, Chamindi, do you think that's a good question? I thought that would be something you would appreciate. It'd be up your alley a little bit.
I think everything that a person asks, that applies to their life is a good question. I know that sounds
that's true.
Simple.
I meant to say,
I
meaning because generalizing, meaning it's something that a lot of people might feel like that and relate to that question. Yeah, that's what I meant to say.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. So then I emailed back. Oh my God, I thought I put it there. Then, so I wrote the following email. So many points in your question. I commend you for thinking this through. One point to ponder. Who said it needs to be either extreme? It might not have to be the other's, quote, fault, and neither take it too personal. We'll address some and more of these points as we move along. Would love if it can be brought up in the classes. This was before I thought I was going to use this email, as I just answered in the moment. Keep asking and growing. So there's really 2 angles to this question, and we're going to address one of them tonight. One is about the other person, and one is about ourselves. And at least it's likely 2 classes. One is really intellectual, and the other is emotional. So let's really first understand the psychological depth of her question. See, what's the premise that she's basing her question on. And she really says it. She says it's about internalizing what they say, what they do, what they show. I actually love her word cycle. And we're going to discuss that in future classes about how that actually ends up becoming the cycle between us and other people, and how that continues to go and what we can do actually about that. But first, she's giving credibility to what their opinions are. Now, my first instinct was to give a share about that. And I have many, many sources and concepts about not giving credence to those people, to what they think, to what they say. But if anyone can really tell, Khanmindi, I think your style, and tell me if I'm right or wrong, that if I would do that, if I would give a share like that and showing, again, the importance of just, thinking about yourself and believing in yourself and so on and so forth, that the question might be something like, okay, Shlomie, that sounds really nice, but who isn't affected by everyone else? How do we do that? And that's because the way it works is that we are creatures of input and output, and we're affected by the people around us. And that's how we work. And, it sounds very nice. You give a whole class and you bring down nice marmakaimis and, about healthiness of a person. But how do we actually do that? We all know we, quote, shouldn't care, but we do. Khamindi, would I be correct in saying that if I gave a class and that someone, you might actually ask such a question like that?
Yes, I agree. Those thoughts were in my head. Sorry, I'm not feeling so well, so my input is less right now. But yes, that is my automatic thought of the aspect that
right. So in case anyone wants sources like that, I can give like at least 10 shiurim on that, 10 classes, whether it be from svarim, from psychology, regarding emotional and mental health, to show, because that is actually a big topic and it will come up regarding that. People feel like selfish when they are thinking about just thinking about themselves and of course it makes a difference socially for what other people think and feel and say. But I'm skipping that. I'm going to give a class past that as a given. But again, if anyone wants a class on that or whatever, either ask a question now or raise your hand or write on the chat or send us an email, again, at theselfprojectclass@gmail.com. So that we know, because this is all about you. I mean, by me, the ideas actually are there, but it's actually what took me time, what always takes me time, is actually putting it into how to address the questions that are coming up. So I'm moving for now past all the sources that illustrate that we should just be ourselves and discussing how do we actually do this. So it's interesting because, this is how often we feel with other people. And it almost seems natural. And it's like, okay, it's very idealistic to say that, oh, we shouldn't care, and what's the big deal? And so they rejected us, and that's what they said. And, but go tell that to a teenager who's 5 girls said oh, whatever, we're not interested in you right now. Or whoever it is. It could be a 5-year-old, a 15-year-old, a 25, a 35. Yeah, this is how we feel. And, we can learn about these stuff from today till tomorrow. It helps, but how do we actually get started on changing that? So the human being is the person themselves was afar min ha'adama. It's essentially putty. It's clay. A person is like a piece of earthenware. And why is that? What is that significance of that? That we're afar min ha'adama. You take earth and Hashem put the rain and made the person, took all the 4 different elements and made us into who we are. Is because we get shaped, and this is a very behavioral concept, we get shaped by our experiences and all the information that we gather. So exactly like a piece of earthenware, that's the person. We are that putty, we are that clay. We say this on Yom Nerum, Kecheres B'yad Yetzer. We get formed and we get shaped in many, many different ways. Now, actually, Rav Hirsch, he says an idea in Parshas Noach. He says, why do we find when the Torah describes the age of individuals, it says Ben Sheish Mei Shana, like when it was talking about Noach, it says it literally translated 600 years old. That's actually the way it's commonly translated, but actually it's not the actual translation. What does Ben Sheish Mei Shana mean? It means a son of 600 years. Why does it say the son? So Hirsch says, a man is the product of the years of his life. Each day changes him physically and psychically. Accordingly, he's called a ben shanim, a child of his years. That's because the world and its nurturing creates and molds our personality. It's nature via nurture. When we get the nurture, that's what creates us into who we are. And it's all that input from the world that makes us who we are. So that's true, the premise of her question about internalizing, because that input and output, that's the human being. We're like a piece of chaymer, we're like a piece of clay, and we get shaped by all those experiences. And that's our parents, and that's our friends, and that's our neighbors, and that's our teachers, and that's our bosses, and that's our coworkers. All those different things are shaping us. Now, we're actually given tools for internalizing this data. Hashem makes us like that because we start off almost in a way, if you could say that, like blank. Not really, but on some level, a child is like the Mishnah says in Av, is like a new piece of paper. And we're given the five senses. The five senses, it gives you like touch. When you touch something, you touch, so you're able to take in and understand what you're touching is smooth, is hard, is heavy. Sound, you hear the buzzing, you hear the tracks, the trains in the background. You smell, you could tell if there's a fire. Taste, you're getting a sense, you're getting a feeling of what's happening in your world. So the person was created in this way of taking in, of internalizing what's there in the world. Now, but the primary sense for input are the eyes. As we see by any person, the most impressionable part of ourselves is the eyes. And Rav Hirsch says incredible insight into the word of eyes. He says the word ayin means an eye, but there's another meaning for the word ayin. We know that as a ma'ayin, but it's also the word ayin, is a spring or a well. Says Rav Hirsch, because through a spring, hidden depths come to light. The external world is revealed through the eye. The eye is a source through which the external world flows into the human mind. It is as though the universe flows into and gathers in the eye, through which it penetrates to the mind. And that is because the eye is the most impressionable part of who we are. Like we know, everyone says, seeing is believing. As Chazal say, you can't compare hearing to seeing. Seeing creates a blueprint in our brain, which is the computer that translates all the data that we're bringing in. So although we have five senses, the most critical of them are the eyes. Now, what do we see? If that's how we are, and that's how we grow, and that's how we become, is by input, is by taking in the data, is internalizing the things that we see. What do we see? So it's incredible. When I used to teach in seminary for many years, and the way we had it was a very long table, and there were girls on either side. And I would be on the front, the top, by the narrow part, and they would be on the sides. And what I told the girls were that, you know the girl on the other side better than yourself. Because every day you come and you're looking at her. You don't see yourself. I love it when people come and I'm speaking with them and we're working through different things and they're telling me all my flaws because they see me. If only they would have the same insights that they have for themselves. So what are we seeing? We're seeing everyone and everything else. So of course we're internalizing everything because the doors and the windows to the world are open, especially the portals to our inner self, the eyes, that spring that brings the universe inside ourselves. Now that's actually the deeper understanding of something that is very important in Yiddishkeit called Shmiras Einayim. Now actually, maybe this will come up in a different class, but for women it's much different than men, although women have the same mitzvah of Shmiras Einayim. It's just a different way. Now, most people know Shmiras Einayim as in forbidden relationships. And that's true. But the reason why it's usually focused like that is because it's just the most intimate acquisition in a person's life, is that intimate other. So therefore, that's where it's the most critical. However, Shmiras Einayim is not just someone of the opposite gender or something like that. Anything that's not you is a negative gazing. And actually, the Sefer Chinuch in Mitzvah Shin Pei Zayin, which talks about, which was from last week's parasha, V'lo Susu, not to stray after one's eyes, he essentially says that idea, which is that you have to look at your world. If you're looking at things which are not yours, that is a violation of the V'lo Susu Achrei Levavchem V'Achrei Eineichem. The Shmiras Einayim is that because your eyes are internalizing what you see. And one has to be careful what they're taking in, because whatever you're seeing is becoming a part of you. And if it's not supposed to be a part of you, then that is a violation of Shmiras Einayim. And the reason for that is like we see from the question, certain things are not supposed to come into ourselves. Those walls are not supposed to be breached. Rav Dessler actually says a very strong language, almost extreme. He says in this Rav Dessler in Chelik Hey, says, "Tzadik le'roitza," the righteous person doesn't want to. Again, righteous person, like when we say Allah tzaddikim in davening, that's you too. Every single person has that tzaddik inside of themselves. It doesn't just mean that God Hader, like as if it has nothing to do with you. Everyone has a part of everything inside of themselves. You have a little Mashiach inside of you. When you tell somebody, wow, and they're like, they get lit up, and there's like an element of Tchias HaMesim in that person. So you have a tzaddik inside of yourself too. And that part of you doesn't want to see Me'olam Hazeh, and you know this part of you. You know when you're feeling alive and you're on fire and you feel good about yourself. I always tell people, Akala, she's the most gracious. She's the most excited and proud and genuine, and she's so the most sharing. So we have times in our life that we are the tzaddik. And then says Rav Dessler, they don't want to see Olam Hazeh Yosef and Hachach more than what they have to. Rav Sheshes, Rav Yosef, they didn't look out of their 4 cubic feet. Ki hargeshes hachushim merubais, because the multitude of the influx of the senses, milvavulis, it confuses us, it confounds us. We lose focus from who and what we are. And that's the thing about this world, especially in Western civilization, that we're constantly being lured into external gazing. So this is everywhere. Billboards, pop-ups. It's the dressing up of the outside world. That's when people get dressed up and they're being attractive. They want you to look at them. The world does that to us. It's pulling us in every direction. I actually call them dream snatchers, because like we spoke last class, the silence dreams, we have the dreams, but all the things out there pull us out of our element, out of our dream, and saying, whoa, but look at that, and look at that. And we're not living anymore our dreams. We're suddenly being pulled out of our dreams into a different world. And that was what was in last week's parsha, what we learned yesterday, in the end of the parsha of Shlach, V'lo Susu Achrei Eineichem. Don't stray after your eyes. And because, like we're saying, the eyes are bringing in the whole world. Where does the world get into you? How do you know all these different things? It's only because you've seen them. You could hear things too, you could smell things, you could taste things, you could touch things, but that's nowhere compared to sight, to vision. That's Shmiras Einayim. That's guarding the things that you look at. Now, this is an especially important message for our generation, for millennials, and for sure for Generation Z, where they're inundated with data from the whole world, eclipsing anything from inside. truth is, if you think about it, how much of us is really ourselves, our own worlds? We think media, we dress Paris, Italy, China, we compete with our environment, we're happy through WhatsApp clips. It's all about others. If you think about it, it's really nothing about ourselves. Yeah, I would say something controversial, just because it's always fun. But, the danger of the internet might not even be the content as much as it is what it's taking us away from ourselves. The most important person in our life is not heard, seen, looked at, loved, cared about, heard, nothing. All we're doing is seeing everyone and everything else. That is the first part of the question, which is, what do I do? Of what they're saying, of what they're doing, because we're always internalizing, very simply, because that's what we're listening to, that's what we're looking at. So that's the first part, that's the question. How do we change that? So there's a fascinating pasuk that's well known, but I'm going to give a spin on it like I usually like doing, that says, HaChacham einav bereishay. So the simple translation of that pasuk is, the smart person, their eyes are in their head, which, simply understood, is that they're thinking and not necessarily just seeing what's out there. They're more intelligent. However, there's a little depth to this pasuk. HaChacham einav bereishay. It usually means to say like they're looking from their head, not just from their heart or from their flesh eyes. So why wouldn't it say HaChacham einav mereishay? The smart person, their eyes are from their head. What's bereishay? What's in their head? That pasuk is alluding to what right after I sent her the email, like a few minutes later, I sent her a consecutive email. And I wrote, especially in regards to stopping the cycle, we will, Mir Hashem, be talking at length. It's a shift of perspective from outside to inside. HaChacham einav bereishay is saying, not mereishay. It's not that the smart person, when they look out there, they're thinking from their head. Their eyes are in their head. It's looking at their own thoughts, at their self. The smart person doesn't spend their time looking or thinking about others. They spend their time thinking and looking in their own heads. And, it's interesting when anyone is practicing like mindfulness or trauma resourcing, what we have the person do is we want them to break their eye gaze. We don't want them to be looking at someone or something. So many times people close their eyes, but actually a higher level is to look at something boring. Now, why would we want to do that? So that instead of our focus being outside of ourselves, so that the focus could be inside ourselves. Because what feeds the brain? Like we said, the eyes. That's why in halacha, the injury of the eye is connected to the brain. It's considered pekuach nefashis. And as anyone knows anything about basic science, that the eye is very much connected to the brain. And that's actually why in EMDR, which is one of the gold standards of trauma processing, is eye movement desensitization reprocessing, which is the bilateral stimulation of the eyes, which is also related to REM sleep, rapid eye movement, because the processing of the brain is very much connected with the eyes. Now, as simply understood, is that the eyes create the focus of your attention. Where your eyes are, that's where your brain is. It's being focused or distracted, whatever it is, on where your attention is going to be based on where your eyes are. Now, the external eye focuses your thoughts and your soul on the outside world. That's called exteroception. However, I want to introduce to you something called interoception. That's with the inner eye. Interoception is contemporarily defined as the sense of the internal state of the body. This can be both conscious and non-conscious. It encompasses the brain's process of integrating signals relayed from the body into specific subregions like the brainstem, the thalamus, the insula, somatosensory, and anterior cingulate cortex, allowing for a nuanced representation of the physiological state of the body. This is important for maintaining homeostatic conditions in the body and potentially aiding in self-awareness. See, what interoception is that then there's many senses that beyond the 5 senses, there are 10, 11, there's many different senses that they have. And that is, what is that sensation of noticing what's inside of yourself? That's not touch, that's on the outside of your body. It's not sight, it's not, what is that when you notice what's going on inside of your body? That's interoception. That is done with the inner eye. Now, where in Yiddishkeit do we do that? Where do we use interoception? Where are we using our inner eye, that we're focusing on what's inside of ourselves, not what's outside of ourselves? So think about times that we close our eyes. When in Yiddishkeit, in Jewish law, do we close our eyes? So one of the most well-known ones is the recital of the Shema. What are we doing? Why are we closing our eyes? Now, we could develop this over many classes, but who are we talking to when you're saying Shema? Yeah, we're talking to Hashem. Why do we have to hear it ourselves? And that's a question we always ask regarding a lot of these tefillas. And additionally, it's interesting about Shema is that according to halacha, the first thing you teach a child to say is the pasuk is Teretz Yibel Moshe and Shema. The last thing we say on this planet is Shema. And the first thing taught when a young boy starts learning Gemara is Me'imesai Karina Shema. The first thing in Shas is talk about Shema. What's the significance of Shema to the self? From the beginning of a person's life to the end. By a baby, they say Shema. What is it? So B'Sil Salanta says something very fascinating. He says, before you make Hashem king of the world, make him king, accepting him a king on yourself. And there's a lot of depth over here. I'm not going to go through it right now, but when we really get into the relationship with the self, we're going to really show how it's the ultimate, and there's many layers in a lot of these different ideas. But what Shema is doing is that it's connecting ourselves with ourselves. It's making Hashem king over ourselves. What we want to do is to be just with ourselves, not to get distracted with anyone or anything out there in the world. So we cover our eyes that we should not be externally focused. We want to be internally focused. Interoception. That's where the person's life begins and ends. Inside yourself, not in anyone else's headspace or in their opinions or in their life. No, we don't want to be there. When we're accepting God over ourselves, which is becoming who we are, we want to close our eyes. That is, again, a very simple understanding. These layers and layers, and we'll probably get to at future times. And if someone has questions, we could definitely address some of them. But that's the first place where we cover our eyes. Where's another place that we cover our eyes? So another place is about Dekin, the Kabbalah's Panim. What are we doing? Why are we covering the bride's face? Now, there's always halachic elements, and there's always going to be deeper mystical reasons. What happens is that, again, this is going to be a theme we're going to discuss because it's principles of understanding the relationship of the self. But essentially what we do by Shema is really the same thing we do by Echasna, is that we're uniting the soul and the body, heaven and earth, the right and the left, Hashem and Elokeinu. And these are ideas, again, we'll develop. So when we're creating this unity, we don't want any other distractions. And essentially, the woman is like the body of a person, that the eyes are being covered and just being inside ourselves. That is the kala. At the badekin, we want to close the eyes. And there's a few different pieces. She's not seeing out, no one's seeing her. But the objective we're talking about over here is the closing of the eyes. And all she is who she's with, is with herself. That allows for her, just like the body allows the neshama to enter into it, when they're saying Shema, Chelik al Kamamal, Hashem and Elokeinu, and that creates the unity. That is what happens with the woman, the Kala, at her chasna. It's creating, this is the beginning of the unity. And that starts by separating from everyone and everything else and coming into who we are. There's another place in halacha that we close our eyes. So this is a fascinating one. This, many of you, even if you're thinking and trying to guess what this one is, this is from Reb Nosson of Breslov. Reb Nosson in Breslov says in Likutei Halachos, yes, someone got another one, exactly, beat me to it. I'm getting to that in a second. So, Likutei Halachos, he says in Hilchos Netilas Yadayim Shacharis, he says, Ki al yidei shenechnosin lemikvah, when we go into the mikvah. Now, I guess, to me, I wouldn't have guessed this one because I didn't think necessarily that would have to be this way. But this is what Reb Nosson says, and it's part of a larger Torah too. Here we're just touching certain things, so we're just trying to bring out a point over here. Like, again, many of these ideas are just touching the surface. It says, when we enter into the mikvah, v'seismin ha'einayim, and we close our eyes, mechezu the hayalma, from seeing this world, say that al dezeh hu nichlal b'toich b'chinas hadas. Through that, the person enters into the category of understanding. And what's deeper than that is das is always known as the connector. There's chachma, there's bina, and there's das. Man knew his wife Chava. The word yada always connotes intimate understanding, intimate knowledge. And when we go into the mikveh and we close our eyes again, we come back to who we are. We're no more distracted by her and him and them and that and this. We're coming into who we are. That, again, is the regeneration. It's the same thing. It's the same thing like the chuppah, like the Kabbalah's panim. It's the same thing when we say Shema. It's the same thing when we go into the mikvah. Now, as someone put onto the chat, there's one more that actually, a class I gave also, a girl got it. I was like, whoa, I didn't think of that one. But that seems to be a pretty obvious one too. 6 days a week, we're actually a human doing. There's only one day a week that we're a human being, and that's Shabbos Kodesh. All the week we're distracted with so many different things. It's called the Lamates Malachas. There's one day that, again, and we create more rabbinic halachas to try to keep ourselves focused, because the Lamates Malachas that were forbidden on Shabbos is so that we could just be present with who we are and be who we are. Now, how does Shabbos start? So the way Shabbos starts is, again, the closing of the eyes. When the woman lights the candles, she closes her eyes. Again, the reason why we're doing that is because it reorients ourselves into ourselves. Going inside, not going outside. Interoception, feeling that emotion, that body sensation, our thoughts, our memories, all that comes back to us. And that's why it's hard for certain people to daven or to have Shabbos or to do all these different things, because there's no distractions. But that's what Yiddishkeit wants from us, is to be coming back. And you're going to start Shabbos. Shabbos starts with the Jewish woman closing her eyes. And when she closes her eyes, she enters into the land of her soul. She returns to who she is, to what she is. And actually, there's one more, I'm sure there's many more, but there's one more that the Arizal says. The Arizal actually brings down that during the week, one should daven with their eyes closed. And only on Shabbos to have your eyes open. And we'll talk about this probably in a different class, because on Shabbos you can open your eyes. The woman starts off first closing her eyes from the weekday, and part of that is Havdalah. We put the wine on by our eyes. There's a lot of different deeper symbolism with the eyes. But on Shabbos you could open your eyes because we're not afraid of straying, because we're being who we are. And there's many different ways, many different types of people. When you're looking outside, are you looking at them, or you're expanding yourself coming out? And Shabbos is a day we can look out. But during the week, the result says we don't want our eyes closed. Again, for the same reason, not to be distracted by this world. It's coming into who you are. That is, as we'll discuss at some class, that of tefillah, which is coming into yourself. And again, that's why by Shemona Esrei, by the Amidah, we close our eyes. Now, it was once a wealthy woman who she wanted to do what's called a random act of kindness. She was very wealthy. So she took $1 million in a knapsack and she drove around a very poor neighborhood. And she saw a homeless man with his cart. And she saw that he was sleeping. She didn't want him to realize. She took the knapsack with $1 million as he was sleeping and put it into his cart. And put it there in the bottom of the cart. And the man was still sleeping. And she got back into her car and she drove off. Now, there was someone there who saw this happen, saw this transpire. And he runs, "Hey, buddy, what are you doing here?" The guy wakes up groggy, says, yo, man, I didn't do anything to nobody. Please, leave me alone. Says, no, you don't belong over here. Says, what do you mean? I'm not on anyone's property. Please, leave me alone. Says, no, you belong in the finest hotel, in the finest apartment in the city. He goes, yo, man, no, please, don't mess with me. I'm not asking for any money. I'm not asking for any handouts. Just please, do me a favor. Leave me alone. He goes, no, you don't understand. You should be at the finest restaurants. You should be cleaning yourself up and be living the nightlife. Says, yo, man, what do you want from me? He says, you don't understand. You're a millionaire. He says, look, come on. What are you driving me crazy for? He says, he digs deep into the guy's carriage, and he pulls out the knapsack and he throws it at him. He says, open this up. So the guy opens it up and he sees $1 million of cash. He says, what is this? And he tells him this story. Many times, we can be millionaires, and we have it inside of ourselves, and we're none the wiser. And if we don't know that, it's not worth a red cent, because we don't know that we have it inside of ourselves. We have to take a peek inside of ourselves. How does that look? Yeah, we see, we hear what other people are doing, what they're saying, what they're showing, what they're acting. But what is it that we are thinking? And what are we feeling? What does that look like? Yeah, we have eyes. That is sensory input, taking it from the outside world. But that's not the only place that we could be internalizing information from. There's also the inner eye. There's the chacham. The einav is beroishai, is in his own head. There's a very fascinating wording from the Alei Shur. I don't think I've wrote it down over here. The Alei Shur says the following words. He says, Das uzvuna, says wisdom and understanding, einan mailas hamagiyas lanu mechutz lanu. They're not attributes that come to us from outside of ourselves. He says, Ein lonu elo liftoyach es hamayan. Says all we have to do is open up the spring, hanimtza ba'atzmeinu, that's found inside of ourselves. Shehu hashayrish shalom. That's our root. We have that seed inside of ourselves. Now, I'd imagine we'll talk about this in another class. I want to leave some time for questions. And as we've said, Torah is the vehicle for the work of the self. So although we cannot fully trust our instincts And we need the influence of the Torah. But ultimately, the Torah is like the rain. We are the soil. The reason why Adam is called Adamah, from the earth, the ability to sprout is inside of ourselves. The Torah is only bringing out what is there. We just need the rain to bring it out. The Rabbi Rucham of Mir says, Hachiyas hu ba'adam umei atzmai. A person, his life is inside of him. You just need the rain. Torah is called Geshem to just bring it out. But you don't have to go out there to find the answers. Like the title of this class, live with insight. The sight should be inside, in sight. Spend more time with yourself. You could even be with people and your eyes could be open, but you can notice your own thoughts, your own feelings, your body sensations. And there's many steps, and if we want, and if I get enough feedback, we can do that next class. We can go through together and show the steps of how to do that. But this class was just illustrating the first step. Start noticing what's inside. Shift your primary focus from outside to inside. So although there are people out there in the world, and they may be parents, they may be children, they may be spouses, they may be neighbors, they may be relatives, they may be friends, old friends, new friends, they may be all different types of people. And yes, our eyes and our ears and our nose and our mouth and our hands are internalizing that information. But like I emailed her back, who says we have to either be upset at them or that we have to be too sensitive? What that means to say is we can shift our perspective. Now, again, I know for Mindy, there's still going to be, okay, how do we do that? But what I was addressing was that beyond the idea about the should of just understanding that what we think is more important than the other ones, but what I thought the critical idea I was going to introduce in tonight's class was that realize that we're doing that. Is if you know when you're looking at other people's houses, you lose the pleasure of your own house. When you're at a function or at an event or at a simcha and you're looking at someone else's spouse or someone else's children or someone else's clothing, you lose the pleasure of your own. Don't look. If someone is telling you different things that are hurtful and harming you, don't listen. Now, I understand there's going to be many different variables, and some people we have to, but even when we are listening, don't forget to look inside. Insight is the ability of looking inside of yourself. And yes, we'll talk about having a relationship with yourself and talking with yourself. Those are all later stages. But for now, just notice that you could shift your perspective. The final say can be yourself. That is the first step. Again, it's not answering the question totally. As you can see already in my style, there's so much groundwork to make. But the first thing is living with insight. That is the first thing that one has to do if they want to live the life of the self. So I'm going to open it up for question. I mean, there's definitely much more to talk about, but Khalmindi, if you have any comments or if anyone else has any comments to either ask the question or put on the chat, whatever.
Just to make more clear, so I feel like this girl should be, I don't know, feel answered a little bit more to explain as to... I
don't know if it's a girl or a woman or older, I don't know who it is, so I'm saying.
Whomever this person is, as to why the other people's opinions shouldn't matter so much. I mean, I know that you explained it's all about looking inside yourself and everything like that, but it's to like why we naturally put weight to other people's opinions and why that's difficult. At least if you can address that as to why those people's opinions shouldn't matter so much. I know you kind of explained it, but I feel like, I don't know. I don't feel like it's very answered.
Right. No, it's not. And like I said, that it's not answering it all. And because there are so many steps, and it is a lot of work to do that. All I did was I said the first, actually, you mentioned something that I specifically did do, and I'm happy that you pointed that out, which was to say, why is it that we give so much credibility to other people? And that's how I was showing that that's how we are created. Because people wonder that and say, why am I like that? Why do I care so much? It's important to validate yourself and understand that we were created like that. A child is shaped by their parents for good reason, because they're totally integrating and internalizing with their five senses what's going on around themselves. And they don't have the capacity to do what we're doing. Yeah, the reason why we became who we are is the natural law of the way Hashem set up the world, which is to become shaped, like we said, like the cheres, like the earthenware, about your environment. However, the chacham, when we get wisdom, is then we can have the ein of biroshai. We can then start looking inside and not just being dependent on other people outside for who we are. So those are the points, that's what I wanted to illustrate as the first step. That was just to create the shift. And that is, we then when we go down that road, there's a lot of different mile markers to hit. But the first thing is living life with insight, looking inside, interoception, and not outside, not being distracted and pulled by other people, things, or whatever it is that's out there, but rather going inside. And that is the beginning of becoming who we are. That is the yedias atzmi, like Rabbi says, that you don't have to get the information from the world out there. Of course, you're supposed to ask a child to a Rav or to consult with a friend. But the first step is, what do I think? What do I feel? That's the first step.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay, so if anyone has any other questions, I mean, I left time for questions. I just, we just went away for Shabbos, me and my wife, and we gave them the opportunity too, but everyone has to be comfortable. But you can do it anonymously on the chat or whatever. But I mean, because there's so many questions, obviously, I myself know I'm leaving so many things unanswered. So I mean, but I'm addressing that question, and that's starting the trajectory. I probably will, if no one comments or something that's very different, I probably will continue next time about how do we do this. So yeah, okay, but it still makes a big deal to me. Yeah, fine, looking inside, but that doesn't seem to change my feelings. And that's why I said tonight's class was the intellectual part, was the one about me. The next class is going to be about emotionally, but yeah, like we say, right? I get it here, but I don't get it here. I get it in my head, but I don't get it in my heart. I still feel like that. And, I still feel, pulled and dependent on other people. That will be the next class about, okay, how do I deal with that? And why is it like that? And then when I'm making the shift inside, so how do I actually help myself? So, okay, now I'm looking inside, but now I don't feel I'm even capable of dealing with their words and their comments, because we know it's not as simple as I'm making it sound. There could be barbs with their words, and they know how to cut in. They, the closest people to us are the ones that are the most critical for us relationally, and those are the ones that it's the most hurtful, and they know the most about us, and that's where we start closing off and being vulnerable. That's the most important. Like you could be the biggest person out there, the most famous, the most well-known, the most kind and gracious, but if the one closest to you rejects you, it's done. You're not worth anything. You can never become who you are. So yeah, we know it's not as simple as I'm making it sound. So I'm definitely leaving room for questions in case people have specific questions.
So no one's asking. So maybe you should start continuing as to say, how is a person supposed to do this?
So I don't know if I'm going to be able to start it. Because it's we only have another 7 minutes. I'm not going to go start the whole thing, but maybe we'll just talk a little bit for a second about interoception and how that actually works. So getting used to this, in other words, it's you have to get used to the idea. Like for example, when I teach people about mindfulness, it's like yeah, I can't do this. It's it's not for me, and I was like that too first. It was not for me either until it was. And then it's very much me. And it's really what tefillah is supposed to be. If you read Ari Kaplan's works, it's like fascinating how davening is not what it was supposed to be. And you see that in the Mishnayos when it talks about Hasidim Rishayim, they were shoyin sha'achas koyim tefillah, shoyin sha'achas achar tefillah, and the tefillah took an hour. So they daven for 9 hours a day. An hour preparing, an hour afterwards, and an hour of the davening itself. What was taking so long is because it was a meditative experience. It's not about moving, about the words. It's a mantra. And it's experiencing that. And a very simple way of getting used to this is what's called doing a body scan. A body scan is essentially shifting your focus from outside inside. And what we do with a body scan is really what this insight is. One example of this is called sensory tracking. So you want to do all these things non-judgmentally. Is notice, and you can do this right now. We have 5 minutes left of the class in case you signed up for that amount of time. So you can close your eyes, or you could keep it open, but keep it focused on one thing that's not too distracting. And go inside your body and notice the various sensations in your body. Notice if you feel any tightness in your shoulder, in your lower back, if there's any tenderness, softness. Notice what you're sitting on, that your socks and your feet, the temperature, your urge to move, to breathe, your stomach, the pressure. There's so many different things you could notice. But the objective is just to observe. And don't think it's supposed to be a certain way. Just observe how the sensations evolve as you name them and as you notice them. And you want to try this in joyous times and relaxed times, just as you want to be able to use it in the hard times. And just go inside and just notice it. And you can notice the weight of your body on the chair if you're sitting down or if you're laying, what's beneath you. But that's the beginning of going inside, getting used to, and there's many going insides. There's, like we said, the Chacham, the end of his Bereishai. Noticing your thoughts. What are you thinking right now? Becoming conscious of your consciousness. Thinking of your thoughts. Noticing your emotional state right now. And feeling your body. There's many different parts of ourselves. But get to know yourself. The first step is looking at. That's what I was focused on tonight's class, was just living with insight. Realize that your eye is the primary fountain that brings in all the things that you know and that you care about and you love, and all that is coming from your eye. Guard your eyes. Be judicious about where you're looking and focus inwards, not outward. That's where the great righteous people, they don't look at anything, like we said. They don't look beyond their Dalet Amis. Why are they doing that? It's because they don't want to get distracted from themselves. It sounds so egotistical, but the thing is, it's not, as we'll explain later classes. The world you're supposed to live in is your own world. Doesn't mean you're not supposed to be with other people and experience other people. But there's two types of that. There's you expanding into others, or you contracting and pulling everyone into you. Like Sasura is saying, don't look at things that are going to make you smaller. Look as an expansive looking at what's called an ayin taiva. But we have to be careful when we're looking. If it's not things that are you, that then makes us smaller. And that's, again, it's not answering the question, but it's the beginning of answering the question, which is to start noticing that we're looking outside and not looking inside. Okay, so again, if anyone has any questions, comments, this self-project class at gmail.com. So far, the last classes I've been going based on the questions, and they've been building on that. And feel free to send any types of comments here and there and everywhere.
So you could end off with a positive mantra that could be helpful in regards to feeling positive about the self, since you have a minute left.
A positive mantra about the self?
Mm-hmm.
Well, so, I mean, really, ideally, it would be about the person themselves, something good that they know about themselves. But there's like when you have an abundance mindset, it's very valuable in creating a positive affirmation. When you're able to realize that's really the concept, that the way the Sefer Chinuch talks about it, like we quoted him about the mitzvah of Leisusuru, is about realizing the abundance that you have in your life. So it doesn't even have to be, because some people don't, it's hard for them to even think affirmatively about themselves. It could just be what's in your world, in your sphere of abundance. And, it could be like, wow, I have such a brother that...
This is my mantra? Okay, yeah. Okay, yeah.
There, a lot of brothers out there in the world, right? And it's easier for people sometimes, if depending on where they are in the self, and being thankful for that, and that is focusing on the you. Again, we'll talk about the you, how it could be small or big. The you doesn't have to be just this you. The way the Sefer Chinuch makes it, it's all the yous that there are: your children, your house, your car, but it's all the you. And find something in that circle that you're thankful for. And that could be something that's taking you inside and not being distracted by what people are doing or saying on the outside.
So something more specific, if you can say, an example that somebody can say to themselves, a mantra that they can have a positive self-image type of thing.
I mean, really, that's what Maidani is, like we spoke about in the previous class. But you be a little bit more specific. What do you mean, like a positive for?
So this whole aspect is about the self, right? People feeling positive about themselves. Basically, I mean, there's so many different levels. That's why you're giving so many classes. But it's people feeling good about themselves, thinking good about themselves, knowing about themselves, right? And sometimes people have the difficulty keeping this positivity up. So that's why mantras are very good. So what is an example of a mantra that somebody could say? I know it's specific to each person. So what's one type of example?
Oh, not a generic, meaning a specific, if I would just give an example.
Right.
So, so it's like we said, either something that is a bounty that we have, or it could be something like, so actually fascinating. One of the things, I don't know if I mentioned, I actually spoke over Shabbos a bunch of times. I went to a community, and one of my favorite vertlach that gives me inspiration every single day by Pesukah de Zimra is a vert from Reb Nachman of Breslov, one of his most famous Torahs. We'll for sure talk about it here in this class because it's one of the classics. It's called the Torah Kuf Pei Beis. It's called the Torah of Azamra. They made English books about it. Whatever. It's based on the pasuk that says, sometimes you come and you're like, what's so special about me? And this is the same thing again and again, day in, day out. You know what? People don't even appreciate me anyway. And what's the point? And like, forget about it. And so we have all these different types of negative statements we're telling ourselves, the scarcity mindset, all these different things. And Reb Nachman says something fascinating. He says, Azamra la lakai bi oidi. He says, I'm going to sing to God bi oidi. What does oid mean? Oid means like still. But oidi means to say, is there still something good that I have? Something? Did I help my niece and nephew? Did I call my mother? Did I do a job at work? Did I do anything good? Then I'm going to sing to God with that. I have something to share with the world. That's what I'm going to sing to the world with. And again, I didn't give you an example, but I'm just showing you that for me. So if I, let's say, gave a share, and I felt like, people didn't show up or people weren't so interested, and I didn't even get like that feedback. I'm like thinking, what? Forget about it. And I'm able to think, what? I learned Torah today. I did something, because we get stuck in this Leisusuru mindset, looking out there, because obviously it all comes from comparisons. It all comes from living outside of ourselves. Because inside, nothing really changes. It's all because of we don't even realize the subliminal message we're getting from other people and other things, situations. So find something good that you did and sing to God with that. I did something good, Hashem. Okay. It's good. I said hello to my wife. I looked at my kid. I did something. I'm going to sing to God with that. So again, you could do a mantra type. You could do a positive affirmation, but it's just noticing it's the inside again. It's going inside instead of being so distracted by everyone else. All the other people out there, go inside. So yeah, it could be, thank you, Hashem, for giving me a brother who cares about me and I have a relationship with him. It could be something like that. Or it could be that, I represented someone's question in a good light. And it could be, every day could be different. It could be the same one, but that's what we want. If you want to talk about positive information related to the class, it's that insight. Go inside, find something nice about your body. Something. I do this with couples a lot. Find something you like. Is there something you can focus on? Focus on that. You can do that with yourself too. Something. Your hair, something, your eye, something. That's the insight. Because you're noticing everything you're not by when you're looking at her and them. Got it. That's Lois Asura. The mitzvah that we spoke about tonight is looking inside yourself. That is the first shift we're creating, not to be so impressionable by the other people, what they're saying, what they're doing. So I know I didn't answer the question all the way, but that was the springboard that we were doing for this class. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We greatly appreciate it. And it's always a pleasure to be part of this. Actually looking for this. I don't see it. Okay. Very good.
Okay, thank you, brother, who I have a relationship with. Have a good night.
Take care.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.